What exactly is a penetration test? What is it about and why is it done? That's what this video is about. A penetration test, or pen test for short, refers to a controlled attack on information systems or applications. This means that a company can decide to carry out a penetration test if, in its opinion, it has secure systems such as servers, databases, etc., or perhaps has developed its own app or software and believes, okay, this is secure. But I'll have it checked again through a simulated hacker attack to really make sure that no one can manipulate it in any way. What is the process of such a penetration test? First of all, of course, a company has to be commissioned. It's always best to choose an external company that hasn't been involved in the development of the system in any way, so they can really bring a fresh perspective, so to speak, to the application or the system environment. Of course, it first has to be defined exactly what is to be tested and in what way. That means which systems, which IP addresses, URLs should be included with encryption, with firewall, or without, That always depends a bit on what you want to achieve. You could also conduct multi-stage penetration tests. For example, you might look at it like this. I have a so-called web application firewall in front of my application, and it already filters out a number of attacks. But what if, for example, it failed to detect an attack, and then the application would be left unprotected against this perhaps new attack? You could also test that, for example, with and without the firewall filter in between. Then it's important to determine what the prerequisites are for the penetration tester to actually carry out this test. Are there perhaps access restrictions where you say, okay, you're basically simulating an attacker from within the internal network? In that case, you would, of course, have to provide access from the internal network as well. For example, that could be a former employee whose access was not deactivated in time or something like that, right? For example, you could give them a test account, a test user account, with which you would then try to access the application, the system environment, the servers accordingly. Another consideration would be whether they might need certificates that are perhaps also given to partners who should have access to my systems and which may no longer be under my control. That means I don't even know whether this certificate is still in the hands of my partner, my business partner, or whether a hacker might have gotten hold of it by now and is now using it, so to speak, to perform actions on my system in the name of the business partner. Such a scenario would also be an example of a situation that can be tested. When conducting penetration tests, you would first start by using automated tools to see, okay, how is this service structured? What kinds of requests are being received? The penetration tester may also have received some documentation. In what form, in what format do requests actually need to be sent? And then, for example, you need to check how the system processes the manipulated information that I might send. So, as a plausible example, if I have an input form online with fields like first name, last name, or something like that, and then I maybe enter numbers there or something similar, or the other way around, I enter a date of birth, something in the future or something like that. Or I enter, I don't know, the 50th day of a month or something like that. The point is to see how the application reacts when I obviously make incorrect entries. And this can go so far that, for example, in the input form, I might not even have the possibility to make such incorrect entries because it's programmed that way, but I can still somehow manipulate the submitted network traffic to change the data so that it still arrives incorrectly at the server. And that would be an example of a scenario you could test. The actual goal is then to see, okay, how far can I get? Possibly entirely from the outside, the so-called black box approach, right? Or I have the so-called gray box approach where I say, maybe I have a user account that I can use and maybe I can access one or two systems with it. What information, what usable, valuable information can I really extract from there? And what kind of damage could potentially be caused with that? That's really what a penetration test is all about. The third option, called the white box approach, that also exists. That's basically, well, a security review, so to speak. That means with the white box approach, the penetration tester has full insight into how something is configured and can therefore perhaps also see things that they wouldn't have easily discovered just by simple testing. This way, they might spot a vulnerability that they otherwise wouldn't have noticed. If, as a penetration tester, I then find a vulnerability, I can also check whether I might be able to access other servers from the server I've just reached. Maybe I found new ways to access systems, perhaps due to network firewall rules. I can't reach all systems directly from my original attack point. But if I, let's say, manage to find a point from which I can go even further, then I can proceed from there as well. So there's really no limit to how deep you can go and what you can accomplish in this process. The final result is a closing report, meaning a document where everything is recorded. Usually it details exactly what was done and which vulnerabilities were found. A penetration tester would also provide an assessment of how serious this vulnerability is. Is it considered low, medium, or high, right? What is the risk? How much prior knowledge or resources would an attacker need to exploit this vulnerability? And on the other hand, how severe is this vulnerability? And exactly this result can then be processed internally by the company. That means the developers or administrators then have to make improvements here and there and implement the results accordingly in the systems. What do penetration testers not do? They do not destroy systems. It can always happen that testing may also have a negative consequence for the system. That means especially with load testing, for example, you can see whether you can manage to overload the servers, and you can never completely rule that out. But overall, a penetration test is not a real attack. That means as a company, you can always say, hey, stop, something is going wrong here, or you just found some vulnerability that we didn't expect, and now we need to pause for a moment and fix it first. And in most cases, the penetration tester would do the same and say, hey, I found a vulnerability here. I'm not going to wait until I write the final report. I'm telling you right now because it's so serious. So of course, you can coordinate about this in advance as well. So why are penetration tests so valuable? So first of all, I get another insight. How secure are my systems really? I also get proof that I have conducted such a penetration test. That always puts me in a good light during security audits or with partners because I can present that I do this regularly, maybe even once a year or so. That is often a good idea. And of course, I can also test how good my access control is. That means, has someone possibly gained access even to the backend systems, as we mentioned? And then I also have proof that I have checked for that as well. Overall, penetration tests are therefore also an important tool to reduce risk in my company, especially when it comes to a core application that is essentially how I make my money in the business. If I have tested it again and know that it is truly secure, that gives me peace of mind. For more videos like this, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.